Hey, Boaz here with Next Pittsburgh. We are in two places right now. We're at the headquarters for Astrobotics, and we're also at the future home of the Moonshot Museum. And to tell us all about what's happening here, we've got Sam Moore, who's the executive director of the Moonshot Museum.
How's it going, Boaz?
It's great. Thanks for having us.
We're glad you're here. We're excited to share Moonshot Museum with you.
Well, as soon as you said that we could see the contraption that's headed to the moon, I knew I wanted to come see it.
Absolutely. So Pittsburgh is returning America to the surface of the moon this year in 2022. And what we're working to do here at Moonshot Museum is build you a front row seat to that work, a window into the work that's happening here in Pittsburgh to build spacecraft, to launch spacecraft, to control spacecraft from Mission Control Pittsburgh. And Moonshot Museum opens this fall.
Gosh, that's so cool. And so we're going to have to use a little bit of imagination because there's a lot of construction happening, but then you also have these helpful little sort of placards that show us what it will look like in the future. So we're standing in the future museum entry for the museum.
We are. So we are actively under construction right now. So we'll probably catch a glimpse of the painter painting as we make our way through. But this is the lobby. This is where you'll start your visit to Moonshot Museum. And what's really exciting is that when you visit Moonshot Museum, you're also visiting the largest private commercial lunar logistics facility in the entire world, right here in Pittsburgh. We share a building, we share a lobby with Astrobotic. So you'll walk in the same front door, and then you'll take a right to go into the museum space.
Okay, well, let's pretend we're in this futuristic lobby and we are walking into the museum now.
Welcome to Moonshot Museum. It's a work in progress. We have officially kicked off construction before we open in October. And what the most exciting part for me is of the entire museum space is this wall of windows that we have here that look into the real-time work of the commercial space industry. So you can see in here right now, this is the Peregrine spacecraft. This is the spacecraft that Astrobotic is building that will launch later this year at the end of the year. It'll be America's return to the moon. It'll be the first private commercial spacecraft to ever land on the lunar surface. It's going to double the number of nations that have ever been to the surface of the moon, and it's being built by Pittsburghers in this Pittsburgh clean room at Pittsburgh Space Company here at Astrobotic. At Moonshot Museum, this is going to be the backdrop to our work all the time. So when you come into the museum, exciting work like this is going to be happening, work on spacecraft like Peregrine. There's a really exciting mission that Astrobotic has next year called Griffin that's going to be even bigger. It's going to take a huge NASA rover up to the surface of the moon. And you'll see this work, and then you'll make your way through an environment that is designed to take you on a simulated lunar mission, to get you involved in the contemporary space industry. So you'll make your way through an entry theater where we'll reveal this work happening in the clean room. And then
it feels very much like Jurassic Park. It's like at the end of the movie, the curtain rises, and then you're like, oh my gosh, the space vehicle was there all along.
And it's going to be really dark in here, right? Black walls, low light. And then this bright white clean room will open up on the other side of the screen, and then you'll visit the rest of the museum, which we can go check out.
Well, what is this thing going to do once it gets to the moon?
So it's going to land on the surface of the moon, and it is taking a number of different payloads up to the moon. So they include scientific instruments from NASA, things that are measuring radiation levels on the surface of the moon, looking for water particles on the surface of the moon. It's also taking things like the first student-built rover to ever visit the surface of the moon. So Carnegie Mellon University is sending their IRIS rover on board Astrobotic, and it'll be the first university-built rover on the surface. So the spacecraft is being actively assembled in the clean room right now, and one of the things that aren't on the spacecraft yet are the legs, which you can see there. And the legs aren't attached, because it's one of the last things to go on, and actually the spacecraft won't ever sit on the legs here on Earth. It'll be on a stand until it gets to the surface of the moon, because the legs are designed to support the weight of the spacecraft in moon gravity, not in Earth gravity, so 1/6 of the gravity that we have here on Earth. If they sat on the legs here on Earth, the legs would get crushed because the spacecraft would be so heavy. It's also taking some fun payloads like there's a Japanese soft drink company called Bakari Sweat, and they're sending a little bit of their powdered drink mix up to the moon on this Astrobotic mission. And what's neat about Astrobotic is that they're a private commercial company, so they work with government customers like NASA. They also work with, if you had enough money, the going rate is $1 million a kilogram right now, you could send something up to the surface of the moon on board Astrobotic's lander as well.
So for like $1 million, we could send this next Pittsburgh microphone to the moon.
Exactly. However, they also have this neat program that we get to take advantage of at Moonshot Museum, which is called Moonbox. And that is a very, very small payload, the size of like an SD card. And you can put a small personal personal memento in, an SD card in, and they'll send that up as well. And that's only a couple $100s. One of the most exciting parts about Moonshot Museum is every visitor that comes in is going to have the chance to contribute their own story and their own message that we will send up to the moon for them. It's a core part of the museum experience for everyone.
I'm trying to think what's the size of an SD card, so I could send like half a stick of gum or some fingernail clippings.
Fingernail clippings, yep, that's about the size. There's a Kennywood token that's going up to the moon. It was a contest that we ran with the Heinz History Center a few years ago, and that's the Pittsburgh memento they decided to send. And so it really can be anything as long as it's small and it's not a biohazard.
Okay, fair enough. Gosh, maybe fingernail clippings, I guess, might be a biohazard. Okay, so we're moving in to the next part of the museum.
Yeah, and so we're going to walk around some things. We're actively in construction here. A couple interesting things. There's a model of Peregrine underneath that tarp to protect it from paint drippings right now. And this is actually a mobile clean room. So if we look over here, you can see there are two big garage doors on this side of the building. And those garage doors are the doors that Astrobotic uses to move spacecraft out of the building. So in order to create a seal between the two spaces, create a seal when they open the clean room doors, they use this mobile clean room to get things out. That'll be moving soon because we'll need to start building the museum space.
Oh, I see. So they'll have it in the mobile clean room as it sort of moves in between the two doors.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The space we're standing in right now is designed to be an extension of the clean room that you as a visitor can play around in. So this is what we're referring to as the Lunar Lab. So on the other side of these windows, we'll have a big table where you'll actually be able to assemble your own lunar rover to search the surface of the moon for ice. You'll decide how you power it, what tools it'll have, decide what makes it work really, really well, and then go on your own lunar mission to discover water ice on the moon, which is really, really important. Water is really, really important for us as we kind of build a future up on the moon. So in this part of the museum, this is going to be a simulated lunar surface. So there's going to be moon rocks on the floors, a huge mural on the back wall that kind of sets you down on the surface of the moon. This is where we're going to talk about all the exciting stuff that the moon has to offer, and also how hard it is to find a good place to land and to build a future settlement up on the surface of the moon. You got to think about geography. You got to think about access to water, access to light, access to different resources, and you got to think about most importantly, the terrain and whether it's actually possible to land where you want to land and then build where you want to land. And so we'll talk a lot about that in this space, along with some art activities in the next space.
And then as director, one thing you have to think about is, I guess this is not only an exhibit space, but it's also a area where a module might be heading on its way to some launching site somewhere.
You're exactly right. So this kind of runway here between these two doors, this is where spacecraft leave the building. So this is the door that goes into Astrobotic's clean room. It rolls up, spacecraft roll out, and then this door opens up onto the loading zone here at the Astrobotic and Moonshot building. And what that means is that everything we build in this back third of the museum has to be able to move so that they can move enormous spacecraft through this space. So that was a fun quirk of building out the museum space, was how do we make it super cool, super immersive, and also flexible so that when Astrobotic needs to move spacecraft in and out, they've got a clear, wide open path to do so. So against this far wall over here that we're painting right now, there's going to be a futuristic lunar habitat. This is a space where we're going to talk about how we build society up on the moon, who writes the rules of the road for the moon, who's in charge, how do we make decisions, and talk a lot about space policy as well. The reality is that there's a whole field of space work that's dedicated to law and to policy. You can be a space lawyer as a full-time job. And we're going to need a lot of space lawyers and a lot of policy experts in the years to come to help us answer some big questions about what it means to leave Earth and live or temporarily have a settlement up on the surface of the moon.
Like who decides what the driving speed is on the moon?
Who decides the driving speed, right? If someone steals something, who's in charge of overseeing how that all plays out? Who owns different things that you find on the moon, right? If you find a really great group of resources on the moon, or you find some water ice. Do you own that? Does your country own that?
You find a Kennywood token that someone left up there.
Exactly, right. You come at who owns the Kennywood token? So there are a lot of big questions that we're going to have to answer in the next 20, 30, 50, 75 years. And what we want to talk about here at Moonshot Museum is how kids in our neighborhood, how kids in Pittsburgh can and should be playing a role in those conversations. The reality is space is a lot more than rocket scientists and astronauts, though they're very important. Space also needs artists and designers and policymakers, engineers of all kinds. It needs HVAC technicians and really highly skilled welders in order to make the industry grow. And Pittsburgh is really, really well positioned to be on the leading edge of that, and our young people are as well.
And then will people just be able to come to the museum starting in the fall? They can just buy a ticket and come check all this stuff out?
Absolutely. So we'll be opening in October. Mid-October is when we'll open. Official opening date coming soon. And you'll be able to come in, and we'll have normal operating hours, and come visit, watch spacecraft rebuilt, and then go on a mission yourself. And what we really want to do is just bring space alive, make space more accessible, inspire people to get plugged into space. And if they don't pursue a career in space, that's okay. We want people to know how space is impacting their life right now and all the opportunity it holds for the future.
So cool. Well, did we see it all? Is there another corner?
We did see it all. All of the corners we can get to, we've seen at this point, because we're painting right now. Soon we'll be doing some floor work, and here in the next 6 weeks or so, we'll begin to install the exhibitions in this space. So you'll see moon rock on the walls and some really cool lighting and a soundscape, all kinds of interactive tables and furniture in here. So we'll have to have you back when we're built out, because this big black box is going to look a whole lot different in just a few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. If you could send like one thing to space, what would you want to send to space?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, here's what I think. So I'm not from Pittsburgh originally. I moved here about 5 years ago, and Mr. Rogers was my hero before that and is even more my hero now. So I would love to send a little SD card with "Won't You Be My Neighbor" on it, the song, or, if I could get my friends at the Heinz History Center to, lend me a little piece of a Mr. Rogers cardigan or something, I think that would be pretty darn cool.
Gosh, I love that. Well, thanks so much for the tour, and everyone else can get a tour when it's complete in a couple months. Thanks so much, Sam.
Thanks, Boaz.